Hello, my name is Justin the Clue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And we have a special guest today, because we're doing a TIFF 2017 Spectacular, and that guest is...
Matthew Kumar, everybody!
Whoa!
Oh, I was hoping it would be George Clooney or some big celeb.
Well, the audio is a little bit weird on this episode, because we're recording live from the floor of TIFF Enterprises.
Why, in fact, there's George Clooney right now. Hi, George.
Wow, you can't even tell us apart. It's like a mirror.
And there's Jessica Chastain walking by in the new Aaron Sorkin Molly's Game.
You know, these two are such pranksters. They stole our regular microphone, which is why we're using the less good microphone. Those when you get George loose, who knows what'll happen.
Wait, who's this that's coming over? Oh man, I think we may have to change the subject of the episode. Could it actually be, is it...
Hello, my name is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'm going to terminate you.
Whoa!
Whoa, Arnold, were you in a horrible car crash that affected your voice?
Listen, Matthew, there is nothing funny about disability.
Yeah, Matthew, it sounds like...
Sounds like you're body-shaming disabled people.
No, so...
I'm voice-shaming disabled people, Arnold.
So, our subject matter is Arnold Schwarzenegger, because all of us here have seen a bunch of movies at TIFF, and we haven't had time to do too much research on our subject. And we all love the man, don't we?
Yeah, we've been saving this one for a rainy day. A rainy day when we didn't want to do a lot of work.
And Matthew, being a loyal listener, actually emailed me and went, I need to be on the Arnie episode. Why is that, Matthew?
Well, I mean, our last episode that we did together was, what was it called? Shit that we watched as kids?
Yeah.
And that was like a really fun episode where I got to like revisit a movie from my past, Jumping Jack Flash, which, as everyone knows, and we all agreed, is an amazing movie. And
due to legal reasons, we cannot contest it at this time.
And the last episode, I heard you guys go, we're going to watch Twins, Commando, and I was already like writing the email because Twins was one of those shit I watched as kids movies, and Commando is, sometimes you think about what you would, if you got to do a film screening, and how you would come out and you'd pick a film that you loved, you could textualize it for the audience, and you would share something that you loved with people. Commando is always probably my number one film that I would pick to show people, because not to get too far into the episode, but I just think it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Like it's a comedy classic.
Now, when I was a kid, Arnold Schwarzenegger was what I thought of when I thought of movies for grown-ups.
Really?
Yeah, because he was like a big, serious action guy whose movies had a lot of violence, and they were rated R, and they were for adults. I no longer feel that way, but his movies felt very grown up. And when I was allowed to watch True Lies with my dad, that felt like a very like I was being allowed into this adult sphere.
Arnold Schwarzenegger may have been the most popular star in my household. The tape of Terminator 2 just got run down to nothing. And I've heard that a lot. Like, a friend of mine, Duncan Bruce, he had watched Terminator 2 so much when he was a teenager, he even made his own drawn VHS label, that he refuses to watch it now. He's like, I will never watch that movie. I almost choked on it because I watched it so much.
I didn't see it till I was a teenager because I wasn't allowed, but I had a Terminator 2 t-shirt, which made me feel really cool because it was an R-rated movie.
I know Terminator 2 so well that I recently did like a pub quiz thing with movies. We had to buzz in, and it was audio description. You wouldn't know what the film was, and the audio description just went, she stands in front of a chain link fence, and I was like, Terminator 2. Because that scene of Linda Hamilton in front of the chain link fence and just burned its way into my brain forever.
There's just something about Arnold Schwarzenegger as an actor that's so appealing. And it's weird that I had never seen the thing that really made him a screen star, which was Pumping Iron.
Yeah.
The documentary about his time as a bodybuilder, specifically the half a dozen times he won Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, and this one follows him on his last Mr. Olympia campaign, basically, when he has a hungry new rival in the form of the Incredible Hulk himself, Louis Ferrigno.
Just to add a little facts to this matter, that actually was officially his last, but in 1980, he got so ripped for Conan, he was just like, yeah, let's just do it again, and he won it one more time. So he has...
what a guy.
He has 7 Mr. Olympias.
Now that underlines 2 things about Arnold that this movie is about. 1, he's a giant jackass.
Yeah.
And 2, Arnold's role in the film, and most of the construction of it, is kind of fictionalized to make it more dramatic. And Matthew was telling me this yesterday because he did a little bit of research into it.
So, Pumping Iron has one of the craziest beginnings of a film I can ever imagine, which is that the original idea for Pumping Iron was that the directors were going to take an already established star and turn them into a bodybuilder.
Star in quotation marks.
Now, for some reason, the star that they picked to turn into a bodybuilder was Harold and Maude's Bud Cort. Now,
why not Woody Allen?
yeah,
oh man, that would have been amazing.
So they literally had Bud Cort from Harold and Maude go to Gold's Gym and work out with Arnold Schwarzenegger a bunch of times. And until eventually Bud Cort, who literally looks like he's made out of wet noodles, kind of went, this is not the project for me. So apparently they were like, oh, we're kind of fucked now. How are we going to make this movie bodybuilding? And maybe it was him, maybe it was someone else, maybe it was just a discussion in the room. Like Arnold kind of was like, why don't we sort of just build the story around the bodybuilders you already have? And I can play the heel character, and Lou Ferrigno, who's like a good, family boy from Brooklyn, can play the hero,
And Arnold Schwarzenegger plays that heel character to the tilt.
Well, even if he decided he was going to be the heel, I believe that this is actually how he is. I mean,
Yes.
we're talking about a guy who, grew up in relative poverty in Austria to like a Nazi father.
Yeah, who would beat him within an inch of his life.
And who, with a name like Arnold Schwarzenegger and a very heavy Austrian accent, was able to not only become a 7-time Mr. Olympia, but also the biggest movie star in the world and the governor of California.
That's insane.
You can't do that unless you're a piece of shit on some level.
I think it's fascinating how much, in this movie, you're kind of, to what extent you are kind of still seeing the real Arnold of that period. And you see to what extent he's so full of confidence because he's won this 5 times in a row by this point.
He doesn't need to win this again.
He's the top of the world. And also, when you look at him, they talk about this making the perfect car, getting the exact, try to add an extra half mile. He has gone all the effort to give himself this perfect symmetry. He literally is carved out of stone. And you can see that he thinks himself as just the perfect man at this point.
He actually talks about himself as if he's a work of art. He talks about how, I saw that I was a little off in one of my shoulders, so then I did exercise in my shoulder, But
the real fascinating thing is the fact that he not only believes he's the best physically, but that he will go to any lengths to fuck his opponents so he will win.
He gleefully talks about giving phony advices.
Which includes telling a competitor that he should scream on stage, because that's the new thing that Americans are doing.
Or he has breakfast with Lou Ferrigno, where he basically just kind of
mind fucks him.
Where he's kind of I think in a few years you'll be really good. I mean, I think you just peaked too early this year,
Yeah.
As if he's actually concerned about Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, with Lou Ferrigno's whole family there.
Yeah.
And even at the end, where, spoiler alert, Arnold Schwarzenegger wins the competition, he's still fucking with Lou Ferrigno on the bus. He's like, maybe I'll start dating your daughter.
It's kind of awesome when you put it that way.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things of this movie was that, me and Justin have watched a lot of canon films with Lou Ferrigno in it by now. Mm-hmm. And when we watched Hercules and a few other things, we were kind of wow, Lou Ferrigno at this period of time looks incredible. He's so sculpted, and he's also so charming in his own way.
He's very sweet.
And I think that this movie's interesting because when you watch it, you see Arnold as this overpowering heel, and you see Lou Ferrigno as this sweet, nice guy, and it's the same feeling I have when I watch this canon film. It's just Lou Ferrigno's so nice. I kind of wish he was more successful, but at the same time, you can tell nice guys don't win. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I know that whenever Arnold's on screen, I'm riveted by him, and I'm not riveted by Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, you're not riveted by him. You're just seems like a nice guy.
Yeah.
Whereas Arnold, you're what a fascinating character.
Well, Arnold is otherworldly.
Yes, exactly. That's what the difference is.
Yeah.
Even watching him in Pumping Iron, his accent just has not gone away. It's the same way that he talks there up until to this day.
He's just such a charismatic guy. There's something he radiates almost. Even a scene when, the famous one where he's talking about how he's coming day and night.
Yeah.
Somehow it works because it's coming out of him,
You just get this sense that everything is so easy for him.
Yeah.
Even though it's obvious that he has had to work so hard. Yeah. Because I like work out to some extent, right? But I don't like enjoy it on any level. Like, and even though he's talking about how enjoyable it is, like you see the effort required for even Arnold. Like, it makes him look almost vulnerable when you see him try to lift these things, and the effort in his face to do it. But when he's talking, he has such an easy charm to him. It feels like everything was just handed to him, you know? Like
he's just like laying on the grass, like sunning, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I will destroy them."
But I mean, I think that's why I don't hate Arnold's. Even watching this movie, it's because like he did earn this.
Yeah.
Like
in his Machiavellian way.
Well, not just that, but like the guy worked fucking hard.
Yeah, he did. In probably not the worst circumstances, because he is male and he is white. But like Matthew said, he came from nothing to have almost everything short of being the president.
And he's getting his comeuppance now, so
yeah,
you know.
That's absolutely true. And then so Arnold, I was surprised to learn that Pumping Iron actually came after Hercules in New York, which was Arnold's first film, which was released by a small distributor. He was dubbed over and then just forgotten until it just came back, just like Party at Kitty and Studs.
Right, with
Sylvester Stallone's dick movie.
Has anyone seen Hercules in New York?
Nope.
I've seen it. Not lately. Arnold Stang is his sidekick in the movie. And it's bad.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably why nobody has watched it, beyond the curiosity factor.
I would say Arnold Stang is just an intensely unappealing personality. Arnold Stang, like, he did the voice of... I can't remember. He did the voice of some cartoon character, and he's just, like, the quintessential, like, beta male, like, goofball.
But it actually took...
I'm alpha.
It actually took... not very long for Arnold's like personality to be featured on screen, and that was perfectly distilled in Commando. Which I think the funny thing about Arnold Schwarzenegger is that there was never a period where he was really serious and then became a parody of himself. From the time that he appeared on screen, because he was so charismatic and also so winking to the audience, letting them know it's okay to laugh with him, that it almost feels like a parody right from the get-go.
Yeah, but the weird thing is he never became Bruce Campbell either.
No.
I mean, he's like, on some level you take him seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I take him seriously in like The Terminator. Mm-hmm. Like, he has a little more gravitas than someone like Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, and in something like Conan the Barbarian, which was his breakout hit, like, you can understand what's so appealing about him. That even he's making these goofy faces and making these goofy noises, they are his. And that's what we love about him.
It's all about authenticity, right? Like, it's all about riding that line, because you think of characters like, I don't know why I'm thinking of Tom Wiseau, right? The thing about Tom Wiseau that everyone enjoyed was that, as ridiculous as The Room is, it's completely authentic to what he was trying to do. As soon as he stopped being authentic and trying to be more winky the way he is, it doesn't make sense anymore. And the same with like Bruce Campbell. Like, he's so hyper self-aware of what he's doing. Arnold's easy charm is just like, yeah, this is the thing that I'm doing. I'm not trying to make it this way. This is just how I do it, you know?
And I think there's a lot of elements that go into that. I think that in the case of something like Commando, it has a lot to do with the director, who is taking this material deadly serious.
But I was watching it and wondering, is this supposed to be funny? Like, when he's carrying the tree trunk? I mean, you know, that's supposed to be funny, right?
And the fact that it's like, dun, 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 and then it cuts to like,
or like him and Alyssa Milano, like, sharing ice cream.
Yeah, that has to be what like one of the all-time greatest openings to a film, with him like literally like holding a huge tree trunk and then chopping it, and because the music makes you think it's going to go one way, as he chops, and you can see he's so hardcore, he can like spot in the gleam of his axe someone is coming up behind him, and you're like, holy fuck, he's gonna have to kill a guy with his axe. It's his daughter, Alyssa Milano, and he spins around and lifts her up, and the music does that change, and then they're like feeding a deer, and
eating ice cream.
I think Alyssa Milano, like, doesn't she like bump his ice cream into his face and he laughs?
Yeah.
Like this is a movie that I just like. I could talk about endlessly everything about it, but there's certain beats that I just have to bring up, like that opening straight after that segment where he's like in the kitchen with Alyssa Milano, and they're trying to have this like sense that he's just a family man now, and he's sitting there reading Teen Beat, and he literally says to Alyssa Milano, he's like, you know, why don't they just call him Girl George? It would clean up a lot of the confusion. But then he puts the Teen Beat down and he says, you know, back when I lived in East Germany, they wouldn't allow that sort of thing. And you're like, what's going on in this movie? Exactly. Is that still a funny line? I'm not sure.
Is Arnold conservative or is he being liberal in this case?
He's being liberal with the murders.
Yeah.
What I do know is that he's a member of the Republican Party.
I know, but he plays characters in his movie.
Oh, of
like
course.
John Matrix, who is the best man on the planet and cannot be defeated.
Yeah, he just disappears into the role of John Matrix.
he does, but I think that for me, it's another one of those examples of it. Arnie is kind of like, he's lifted not by only by the material, but it's by the other people who work with them. Because nothing can beat the antagonist of Commando. No, there is no greater antagonist.
The
Vernon Wells.
Vernon Wells. Yes, Vernon Wells, who you may know as the enraged homosexual, I guess, from Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior.
Yes.
And in Commando, he also plays an enraged homosexual. He appears in a string vest, and the entire movie is entirely about the love story between John Matrix and Vernon Wells, whose name is just Bennett in this movie, I believe, because it couldn't be more homoerotic when you really get down to it. And the movie ends with probably the most easily coded thing I've ever seen, which is Bennett and Arnold Schwarzenegger are facing up against each other. Bennett has Alyssa Milano, and Bennett is like, I don't need to go, John. I don't need to go. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's like, hey, Bennett, why don't you stick a knife in me? Which is basically like, why don't we forget these women and have sex with each other? Which is entirely what it's about. And then the ending of the movie is literally Arnold Schwarzenegger thrusts a pipe into Bennett to kill him, symbolizing, penetration. So,
well, that's interesting because the relationship between Arnold and Ray Don Chong never really amounts to much. So I'll buy this theory.
Yeah, I think that it's probably the most now I've seen Tango and Cash, I've got to say, but I do think that Commando is the most homoerotic film of the 80s.
Well, Tango and Cash has a scene where Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone literally walk together naked, and you see their little asses next to each other.
That's true, but I just don't think anything beats, hey Bennett, why don't you stick a knife in me?
Fair enough. So Commando, it's a trim 90 minutes, not an ounce of fat on it.
No.
It moves, It
features my favorite 80s action movie trope, which is everybody piles on to the hero and then he throws them all off like they were dolls.
I would say I think the movie peaks in the first 30 minutes.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, the first 30 minutes is so nonstop.
Yeah.
That Arnold is continually thrown in situations that you think are going to lead in one direction that he just escapes from instantly. Whether it be when the guy has the gun on him and he's like, we need to talk, and then he shoots him in the head.
The plane escape is incredible.
Don't bother my friend. He's dead tired.
This I don't know whether this is actually the film where it became concrete, but this is the film that it feels like the most concrete platonic ideal of 80s action film Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Everyone he kills, he has a quip for, and those quips are callbacks and everything else. Like when he kills the, Sully, and he's like, I said I would kill you last, and he's like, I lied.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just so many amazing people. I think people tend to go to The Running Man for the quips more than anything, but for some reason
I think The Running Man is pushing that point of self-parody.
Yeah.
Where I think it's so over the top. And from the nature of the future and stuff like that it doesn't have that purity that Commando has.
Well, yeah, Commando has a no-frills B-movie quality. Later on, Arnold Schwarzenegger would go into these more $100 million sci-fi special effects movies. This one is just pure, fists and sweat.
Yeah, cars blowing up and him killing 100 guys.
Oh, one of the things that I love, which is he just goes to a random sporting goods store, pushes a button, and there's a huge room full of rocket launchers and shit in the back.
The film is a perfect example of you just buying Arnie as this person. He has almost no backstory. And that all of this is just laid out, and you go, oh yeah, look at how he looks and how he acts, of course.
And he's very wooden in the film. I think he became a much better actor later, but he has strong presence.
What's interesting about his screen presence is that you see in Pumping Iron that he is charismatic, but in his other films, you associate him with being kind of start and stop, difficulty with the English language.
Very monosyllabic, very kind of, in this movie, it's kind of a monotone.
Yeah, he has a very monotone.
But I think that works perfectly in his favor, and is one of the reasons that he was such a huge star internationally, is that you could see in it something different than other English language performances, that in Arnold, it was wrong. But in that wrongness, it feels so right.
I wonder if it's also just the simplicity of the things that he was usually saying. You would always understand what, if no matter where you were from, you'd get what Arnold was saying because it was like a basic sentence he was like saying, you know?
There's also something to the idea that he was this kind of like perfect Reagan era hero where he was a foreigner who had been able to come into America and rise up to the top of America, very kind of like Horatio Alger, pull yourself up by your bootstraps story, and also be totally integrated into America to the point where even though he's got an accent, he plays characters like John Matrix.
You can see that just how he appears physically as well. The idea that look how hard he worked, that's why he has so many muscles. And then you go, oh yeah, that is someone that I should respect.
But of course, you know, in real life he did steroids, so like everything about the American dream, he's a little fake.
I believe he did them while they were legal, though.
It's still...
Well, not that that's acceptable. Yeah. And also his argument was that he only ever used them when he was trying to get his weight down while maintaining muscle mass rather than to build muscle mass, which is his kind of squirrel around the idea, which is like most people use steroids to build their muscle mass to what he was. He was only using them to maintain them when he had to weight down because apparently I know a lot
All right, you Arnie defender here.
That sounds a little too perfect, but okay.
No. I'm just establishing his way of telling it because his multiple Mr. Olympia defenses were often done like at very short notice. Like he just like suddenly like he'd be like, I think for Conan, after Conan, he had like 7 months or something to get ready for Mr. Olympia. Do you know what I mean? So it
makes it okay, Will. So
I actually don't defend the use of steroids whatsoever. Like I just don't know anything about the time. For all I know, everybody was using them.
So looking at his filmography, what I found really surprising is the fact that like The Rock makes 6 movies a year pretty much. And Arnold, it's actually pretty spaced out because after Conan, he made Conan the Destroyer, which is not good. Then The Terminator, which was great. Red Sonja, not good. Commando, Raw Deal, which I always associate the one that came way before, because in Raw Deal they seem to not quite have figured out what to do with Arnie yet. And then Predator, which we're not going to talk about that because everybody has gone at lengths about it. Yeah. Predator 2 is better.
It is not.
That is a very controversial opinion.
The ending of Predator 2 is really good, but everything else about it is bad.
The Running Man, Red Heat, and then Twins.
I always confused Red Heat and Raw Deal.
Red Heat is the one with the Belushi in it.
Yeah.
Newly minted megastar thanks to Twin Peaks.
Yeah, the best Belushi, now we've all agreed.
The interesting thing about Twins is it was actually Arnold's first $100 million hit. I mean, all of the movies he made in the 80s, well, not all of them, but a lot of the ones he made in the 80s were successful, you know, as kind of B action movies. But Twins was like the number 5 movie of the year or something.
I think the reason for that is that since his stardom was minted, it was the first time that he was kind of making fun of himself. Stepping out of that mold that everybody knew him as, and is like, hey, look, he can make jokes too, which has poisoned his brand since then.
Yeah.
And so Twins, Matthew. You loved this movie when you were a kid. We watched it again. You fell in love all over again, right?
I don't know if I would say I would fell in love all over again. But what I would say is that it's like a perfect example of that type of... What year is it? 88 or something?
It was actually, 88.
Like that era of just... As we're just heading into the 90s and these like very like soft family films that were kind of really, really strong and popular in the 90s.
They were shit out.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them were definitely
Directed by Ivan Reitman, the man behind Evolution and my... super ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, just a hack. A terrible filmmaker.
A Canadian legend.
Yes, a Canadian legend. It's just one of those films where you watch it and like the overriding aim of that movie is just to make you feel nice. There's really it's not trying to like really excite you. It's not trying to like really like thrill you.
No big laughs.
It's not trying to make you laugh very hard.
I think you said it best that during the 80s was a time where, you know, they didn't have to have jokes.
Yeah, they like the comedies were just so kind of like airy and they all had this dingy beige color palettes.
And these terrible like soundtracks which are just so sort of on the nose.
Well, so Arnold in the film plays one of the twins who was created through the sperm of 6 men that had sex with one woman all at the same time.
Just like Freddy Krueger. Like Freddy Krueger is the son of 1,000 madmen, do you remember?
Yeah. And
that's crazy to begin a comedy with the idea that like 6 men's sperm were put into this sperm cocktail.
As me and Matthew discussed, it was probably very difficult for all of them to climax at the same time, but they figured out a way.
Why?
But it's not the climaxing same, it's the climaxing and high-fiving each other at the same time.
Well, there are many documentary films you can see on the internet about 5 men climaxing at the same time.
Please contact Will Sloan.
So it can be done.
Like actually at the same time.
We're going into loose cannons territory here. Let's keep it clean, guys. I don't want any Andrew Dice Clay on this podcast.
I don't know why this movie felt the need to like give us this backstory about why, you know, Arnold is the one twin and Danny DeVito is the other twin. Like, all I need to know, like, they could just say it was some weird genetic fuck up. Some strange quirk of nature that they were twins.
I don't think you were really watching this movie, Will.
I stopped watching it after halfway through because it was shit. So, sorry.
Because...
so that you can't say something like that, because the point is, the reason they set that up is because it's established later on in the movie. You even reach the point where they go and see the doctor, right? And he says about
You're right, I stopped watching at that point.
But me and you could talk because we watched it together. And now that
I saw enough to know that this is garbage.
We were cracking jokes a little bit. And then you said, shh, Justin, I need to enjoy this. Where, as we were talking before, the film is just terribly constructed. It's like gangsters and hitmen.
It's insanely constructed, because obviously you have this initial setup, which is that they are, you know, twins, and one was sent away to an orphanage and one was raised on an island. But then, and they're trying to meet each other. But then also, Danny DeVito is a car thief who's accidentally stolen a car that includes a MacGuffin, which a murderous hitman is after. But also, Danny DeVito owes a lot of money to a bunch of loan sharks who frequent the restaurant his girlfriend works at. Meanwhile, they're also, Danny DeVito and Arnold are also looking for their mother, who is also in a pitched battle with real estate developers who want her artist colony.
Yes.
So there's like 14 plots going on in this movie, and it feels like none of them really kick off.
Oh, you forgot a very important one. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a virgin, and he must fuck a woman.
Not any woman. He must have
John Travolta's wife, Kelly.
He must fuck John Travolta's wife.
And I only say that because somehow Kelly Preston is still married to John Travolta.
Well, of course, he's a heterosexual man who loves her. Why wouldn't she be married to him?
Well, she looks great in this movie, I gotta tell you. I can see exactly why a focus group picked her for John Travolta.
And the only reason that this film is enjoyable in any way for Matthew Kumar is the fact that Arnold is tall and Danny DeVito is short, and they kind of do the same things together.
Are you guys excited for the long-mooted triplets, which would feature Eddie Murphy as the third?
That movie will never exist.
We question how that would play off. Would they reveal that there was a third son that was also born that they never heard about?
You know what's funny? According to IMDb, that movie is in pre-production.
That movie has been in pre-production forever.
Yeah.
Like, what I like to imagine that movie opening is that Arnold and Danny DeVito are like looking at the picture of their 6 dads with their mum, and they're like, hey, wait, and they unfold part of the picture, and there's just this black guy standing there, and they're like, wait, we never noticed this black guy before.
Yeah, he was one of the...
They're like, well, you know, if this makes sense, sure, memory erasing makes sense.
Yeah.
No, really, this movie is, you know, an in-depth look at the duality of man, reflected by the differences between, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger who is like represents like, you know, order, and Danny DeVito who represents chaos. And not only is it about that, it's also about the differences between nature versus nurture. Because the idea is that the evil doctor's position is that Danny DeVito is the way he is because he's made of all the garbage that was left over after the perfect being Arnold Schwarzenegger was created. Where really, like, Arnold, who is pure and good, tries to posit that it's all about the way in which Danny DeVito was raised, which was like, you know, without ever truly being loved, and didn't make him, you know, succeed.
I don't think the movie underlines that point.
It underlines that point.
That's so beautiful. I should give this movie another chance.
The thing is, this is the reason I'm putting this is kind of an urtext of like
listen, I'm nostalgic about it.
90s. No, this is urtext of like 90s family films, because that's what all those movies are about how like loving your family, being with your family is like the most important thing. You know, like Mrs. Doubtfire and all these other films.
Arnold Schwarzenegger would go to replicate that in his own life.
Yeah.
Loving your family. And...
The point I'm making is that this is a frippery. Like, it's not, there's nothing like deep or special about it, but it's exactly what the object that it's supposed to be. Do you know what I mean? Which is like silly, like throwaway nonsense that just makes you feel sort of nice and part of the reason it makes you feel nice is because Arnold Schwarzenegger's charm comes out in it. But like he's a tent pole of it. And I think the same in Commando and the same in his other films, it's like he's lifted up by the cast members he's in it with. You know, like they do the groundwork and he just appears.
Well, Danny DeVito is very committed in the film.
You know, like it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger appears, is effortlessly charming in his weird way, and the rest of the film like lifts him up.
Twins.
It's a beautiful film. Has anyone seen the second in the Arnold Schwarzenegger sperm cocktail duology, Junior?
Not since I was scarred as a kid.
Yes, I have. I only watched that a couple of years ago, and if you want me to tell you about a movie that's fucking beautiful, Junior is it. Now, you're going to say...
Oh man, Will's face while you're talking.
No,
amazing.
No, I want this.
Now, you guys are going to say to
content.
me, you guys are crazy, right?
Oh, I haven't seen it in ages. I remember seeing it as a child and not liking it.
Here's the thing I'm going to pause it to you, right? I think that Junior is actually Arnold at his very best. Now, you might be saying, how can that be true? There's so many good things Arnold is good in. Because part of this movie is about how Arnold is secretly pregnant, and he's also falling in love with British actress Emma Thompson. Now, the thing is that Emma Thompson is you know, a famous comedy actress. She was in like Footlights and stuff, Stephen Fry and that. So she has a strong comedy background. And she's also sort of awkward and charming. So somehow her and Arnold create this unbelievably like adorable sort of like meet cute, do you know what I mean? And this idea of them being awkward with each other. Like Arnold's this big, muscular like guy. And you see him vulnerable in a way that you've never seen him before as he's falling in love with Emma Thompson. There's a part where they're like, I can't remember, they like start kissing and they like, because he's a big muscular man, they like fall over the couch and the couch falls over. It's just adorable. I loved it. The movie is 10 out of 10. Apart from probably one thing, which we wouldn't really get away with now, which is when he's heavily pregnant, they have to dress him up like an Eastern European shot putter, female shot putter, and send him to I guess a house where you send women who are heavily pregnant. And that part's a little iffy nowadays. But
so wait, what's your major defense of Kindergarten Cop?
It's a funny movie.
Do I fucking need to defend Kindergarten Cop? Kindergarten Cop's just fucking brilliant.
That's another film do rightman, isn't it?
Yeah. Junior, Kindergarten Cop, Twins.
You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a guy who is very brand conscious, and I just think it's really interesting that he did all these action movies, and then he was like, okay, the next step of my evolution will be this bifurcated career between big sci-fi influenced special effects blockbusters and like comedies that hinge upon my image of being like a muscle man and an action star. And what I find funny is the idea of a pregnant man. Like, you get a real insight into what he thinks is funny by his choices in this era.
A pregnant man is not funny, Will. That movie's about love and family.
I agree with you.
Fatherhood. I don't think that Arnie was finding it funny. I think Arnie, Reitman, DeVito, they were all in it to tell an important story about, you know, fatherhood and friendship and families.
Well, my only rebuttal to that is I remember that there's a passage in Arnold Schwarzenegger's recent autobiography in which he states that one of the first things he asks people when they're pitching him a project is, what does the poster look like? What are we selling? And the poster for Junior features Arnold with a rotund stomach to symbolize his pregnancy, Danny DeVito with a stethoscope at the stomach, and Arnold looking at the viewer like, duh?
But wait.
So I think he finds it funny.
Emma Thompson also in that poster?
Like, yeah, behind them.
See, I think that Arnold said, is Emma Thompson in this poster because the love story is so key to me. The love story is so key to me.
Yeah.
Coming soon
lines.
from Pop Matters, Junior by Matthew Kumar. Now, I'm a defender of The Last Action Hero. I think it's a mess of a movie that's really funny.
Yeah, so good.
And a loose remake of The Purple Rose of Cairo.
I think people reacted to it pretty violently because it was making fun of the movies that they like. They will take a level of parody, but not outright as the kind of skeleton of a film.
And also just because it was one of those movies that was like really overhyped in the months before it came out.
It was going to save a studio for Peter Gruber. And it also opened against Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I remember that's a beautiful summer for me. I remember that summer going to see Jurassic Park, going to see Last Action Hero.
Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, I think I must have seen that summer as well.
Wow, what a summer.
Well, I mean, what a summer, you know? Like, and Last Action Hero, I think one of the most fascinating things about Last Action Hero is that every adult who sees it complains about the fact that it has a kid in it and how annoying it is. And I was a young kid, like younger than the star, the kid who's in it. And I remember also being like, why the fuck is this kid in this movie? Like, because it's one of those classic examples that Hollywood always forgets, which is kids don't want to see kids.
Yeah.
They want to see adults that they can aspire to be.
Yeah, like Will said at the beginning of this episode, that the idea of something adult is very intoxicating to a child.
Yeah.
So if they had made that like as a PG-13 film that starred Arnold and, I don't know, someone his age, or, it would have probably been easier for adults to enjoy, and kids would love it as well.
Yeah, like...
I mean, it's also a mess with a cartoon cat played by Danny DeVito.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I still want to see the Cartoon Cat spin-off. I'm sure that's, in pre-production on IMDb.
So True Lies was the movie that brought him back after that. Haven't seen it in a while. It's probably aged poorly.
It's aged so badly. First of all, he abuses...
He's a psychopath.
He's a psychopath who essentially abuses his wife for a long period of the film, and then the bad guys are could not be more racist.
Right.
He's been in some pretty...
And also, Tom Arnold has an alarming amount of screen time in that film.
Yeah, I mean, you can't strike gold twice with the Belushi and then Tom Arnold. I mean,
And then after that, I would say Arnold's career was a downward trajectory. Eraser made some money, but Batman and Robin, for which I think he had the record at the time for the most amount of money paid per minute.
Around $50 million, I believe.
Yeah, and he had 30 minutes of screen time in the movie. That was obviously a failure. And then there was that run of movies, End of Days, The Sixth Day, Collateral Damage.
One of the worst films that Arnold has been involved with.
It was just like the air coming out of a balloon.
I mean, it was. I think the only one of those that I can really go bat for, actually, is End of Days.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love End of Days.
Because it's hilarious to watch Arnold. For some reason, in that movie, he's like, I'm going to act. Because he plays like a guy whose daughter died or something. So seeing him as a grizzled cop looking at a picture of his dead daughter, trying to make tears come out of his face, it's pretty funny.
Well, I think The Sixth Day is funny. I haven't seen it since it came out.
Oh, it's lots of cloned Arnolds, right?
Yeah, well, that was a movie. So it came out in 2000 and it was set in 2010. And it was one of those movies that was inspired by when they cloned that sheep in the 90s.
Yeah, in Scotland.
Yeah.
In Aberdeen.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, Dolly the sheep. That was her name, Dolly.
Yeah. So already that's hilariously dated when you see it, but also it's the opening scene of the movie takes place at the XFL, which you might remember was Vince McMahon's attempt to combine football and wrestling.
Wow, that is so much. That's what a time capsule.
The 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean, did the XFL only last for half
1
a
year?
season?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so it's set in 2010 though.
Yeah.
And since then, Arnold has basically just parodied himself for a long time until he became governor.
Yeah, he became the governor, and then...
For 2 terms!
For 2 terms, I think he ended on something like a 20% approval rating, so things didn't quite work out for him. And then, of course, the sex scandal in his personal life, and... Recently, he's had a run of movies, none of which have been financially successful.
None.
Except The Expendables.
And I've actually only seen one of them. The only one I've actually seen is the first one that he came back with. The Last Stand, which is actually
I think it's very solid. Very solid.
I mean, it helps that Kim
Ji-woon directed it. A good B movie. And, Escape Plan, I think, is, pretty...
Forgettable.
Pretty tepid. I remember seeing Escape Plan... and thinking that it takes a lot of audacity to put this in a theater and just expect we'll be grateful for it.
Sylvester Stallone and Arnold together at last.
Yeah, but not even close to the level that they were at in the 80s. It's a movie that has this strong sense of entitlement around it.
Well, Arnold's knee-jerk reaction after all of these so-called blockbusters came out and audiences didn't flock to the theater was to go serious. It was films like David Ayer's Sabotage, which he started.
Which I watched half of, fell asleep, never returned to.
The zombie film that he was in, Maggie.
Which I thought was perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, I heard that was okay.
Yeah.
And his last film to come out went to VOD, Aftermath.
Well, I think that Arnold Schwarzenegger is actually very good in most of these movies. He's acquired a certain gravitas...
From Wrinkles.
Yeah, from Wrinkles. And even in The Last Stand, he brings so much baggage with his career and with, what he represents that there's a scene at the end of the movie where, he's tired and worn out from fighting the bad guy, and the bad guy says to him, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm the sheriff." And that, in the context of that movie, that line carries a lot of weight because not only are you thinking about him in the movie, but you're thinking about what he represents as this guy who came from overseas and like won the American dream, and he's like a fully assimilated American.
Yeah, that's how I feel about his role in Around the World in 80 Days. When he's sitting in
film.
that bathtub, it really represents what the American dream can achieve.
Do you know who else was in this bathtub? U.S. President Rutherford B. Hayes.
I mean, one of the things though is that Arnold is like 70 now.
Yeah, he's old.
Like,
and he's lived 9 lives.
He's old, and it's like, I know that to some extent it's hard to let yourself not be relevant anymore, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, he's given us so much. Can't he just rest? Because, as we said, after True Lies, the writing was essentially on the wall. Like, it's kind of like, he was done, he went into politics. Now, we can talk about his politics a little bit. He's always been kind of a Republican character, but like, as left-leaning as that can possibly get.
He's very involved in environmental initiatives. Yeah. Currently, he's involved in an initiative to stop gerrymandering.
And I kind of think that those are the things, like, along with his, like, he's always had an interest in physical fitness for children and all that. Those are kind of the things that he should just do now. Just turn into that Jimmy Carter elder statesman type and stop trying to like force it. He
can't though. He's a man.
I know he can't. It's the same as fucking Stallone. Like just let it go.
Well, I don't know. Like I actually am interested to see him. Like I think he's become a good actor.
Like he can appear in like a Paul Thomas Anderson.
I'd like to see him in a good movie. I mean, it's too bad that all of these movies that he's done, with the possible exception of The Last Stand, have been bad. But I think he's been good in them, and I'd like to see him get the right material and hit it out of the park.
I mean, I agree. Like if Wes Anderson or Paul Thomas Anderson or another Anderson was like W.S. Anderson.
I do not want him appearing.
No, I don't want anyone of those.
W.S. Anderson
was like appear in my film just like in this role. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like rather than it being built around him.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunity, but like.
But who he is, he can't do that, right?
He can't do it. Like it's just. I mean, I love Arnie, but if his legacy actually was fixing gerrymandering and like that was his true legacy, that would be better to me. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'm just waiting for the next season of The Celebrity Apprentice, hosted by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think that will be his true legacy.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
That's actually really depressing to think about.
The conceptually that show didn't make sense because, like, okay, The Apprentice, Donald Trump, he is a real estate mogul. With a lot of business interests, it makes sense that he would hire somebody on the show to handle a company. What are Arnold Schwarzenegger's business interests?
The thing is, you say the Trump thing makes sense, but like obviously Trump is a terrible businessman.
Well, we know he's a clown, but we also know that like he is a guy with his name on a lot of businesses. So the whole purpose of The Apprentice, ostensibly in that first season, was that whoever won this would handle a Trump business.
Well, I believe that I could be wrong. Somebody could write in and correct me. I believe that Schwarzenegger actually owns a lot of gyms and has interests in bodybuilding stuff because he's always been. The funny thing is that we talked about pumping iron at the beginning, right? But two bodybuilding enthusiasts, which is not a sport I understand at any level, because when you watch pumping iron, what you do is you grease up and you just pose a bunch of times, and then a bunch of guys look at you. A bunch
of old guys, write out scores.
God knows what their criteria is because they all look the same to me.
Well, it is symmetry and everything else.
Right.
And
it's like any sport, right? Like you can't defend what they're doing or the choices they make.
But my understanding is that he's to a bodybuilding enthusiast, like Arnold is like a totemic figure in that world. Even now, he is so much. So it's possible, like, related to that sort of thing. Like, he runs the Arnold Classic as well, which is a bodybuilding and sports competition.
I think it's also what we mentioned before, the idea that Arnold came from nothing and made something of himself.
Yeah.
So the idea that he would be kind of trying to... I don't know why we're defending the Celebrity Apprentice, but...
Something that Will said earlier I thought was really interesting about how Arnold's decisions with all his, his success as an action star was to go into, like, family films. And one of the most interesting things about our modern era of muscle-bound action stars, like The Rock, for example, is it felt like they tried to rush that.
Yeah.
So you look at, like, The Rock, for example, he went through this long period of being like terrible, like not even like Arnold quality, like
the Tooth Fairy, the
films.
Game Plan,
like, and that's like one of the first things he like tried to do, and it just doesn't work. Like, it's interesting how like Arnold, for up until we say the mid to late 90s, he was sort of always in the right place at the right time, which was another aspect of his career.
I mean, The Rock makes terrible
decisions, And The Rock, but the reason The Rock is successful is he also has that easy charm.
Yeah.
That he's not just a big muscle-bound idiot, you know, like he's like a guy who's just like charming on screen, and he can also like, you know,
soon to be our next president.
At this point, you know, maybe I'll take him.
I mean, he actually is American, so he can be president, which is one of the interesting things. I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, so you can send letters, questions, comments at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And what are we doing next week?
We will be discussing the career of Roger Ebert. This will be the second time that we've tackled a critic on this podcast. What does Roger Ebert mean, and why? The most influential critic to ever live. What does it mean to be the most influential critic who ever lived? These are the kinds of questions we'll address, and we'll be discussing 2 films relevant to Mr. Ebert. One, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which the Pulitzer Prize-winning critic wrote, and Blue Velvet, one of the films that he hated.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's 2 perfect examples of his personality that were kind of forgotten when people talk about Roger Ebert.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that when Ebert would publish a horror movie review, it's easy to go, well, he wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. How can he be offended by this?
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Matthew Kumar.
Thanks very much
for intimidating us on the podcast.
And remember, everybody, if there's one thing you take away from the Important Cinema Club this week, it's watch Junior.
Oh, God.
Thanks for not calling me racist this time.
There's still time.
So, we're a few days into the Toronto International Film Festival. All the stars are out to shine. Clooney, Damon, all your favorites, all my close personal friends. Justin is accredited as a press and industry big shot this year. I'm not. So I'm going to ask you, what are some of the highlights?
The highlights of this?
Yeah, like you're our lights, camera, Jackson. What are some of the...
I saw I, Tonya, the film about Tonya Harding, the figure skater who supposedly engineered someone to break the legs of her competitor, break the kneecaps, let's be specific. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what the film is kind of a bubblegum Martin Scorsese take on it with a little bit of Coen Brothers, with Margot Robbie giving she's going to be nominated for an Oscar without a doubt, performance that is engineered to get sympathy from the audience to this person who is just a late night punchline. Mm-hmm.
You also saw one of my most anticipated films of the year, Le Redoutable,
yes.
The Jean-Luc Godard biopic from the director of The Artist.
When I asked if Will was going to see it, he said, no, I will watch it on Netflix when it comes out. It is not good.
You kind of liked it.
I kind of liked it. It's like a dumb Listen Up Phillips is what I called it, which is a film completely engineered to just make Jean-Luc Godard look like a giant buffoon for 90 minutes,
and who
has nothing to say.
It has definitely, I think, offended certain people in the critical community.
Well, I saw Jonathan Rosenbaum in the audience with me, and I was like, why is he here? He's going to fucking hate this movie.
Yeah. In fact, this is the main reason I wanted to bring up Tiff, is because you met perhaps the favorite critic of this podcast, Mr. Jonathan Rosenbaum, on the street.
He was actually in the lobby. He was on his phone, and I just looked over, saw he was there. And I went, excuse me, are you Mr. Jonathan Rosenbaum? And he looked up at me with panic in his eyes, as if he thought I was going to serve him papers or something like that. And he went, oh, yeah, well, I said, I really enjoy your work. Thank you. And I just walked away.
Well, that's nice. You made an old man happy.
Probably. I didn't know why he was there, considering he writes for no websites or...
He's probably a programmer somewhere, right? You said he cut his hair.
No, I said he did not cut his hair.
Oh.
Yeah, that it's still stringy and down to his shoulders.
Well, Jonathan, if you're listening to this, consider just a tighter cut. And also come on the podcast.
And Matthew, who's sitting here silently stroking his beard because he's only seen Midnight Madness films, we did get a chance to see Bodied. But we're actually going to talk about that on our Patreon episode, which is going to be about director Joseph Kahn, the auteur behind Torque, Detention, and all the popular Taylor Swift music videos.
Torque.
Matthew is a big Torque fan.
Torque.
Whoa.
Torque.
It's funny how the word loses all meaning when you hear it 10 times.
Torque has meaning?
And will I see more films at the festival? Probably a few.
I'm going to see the new John Woo. I'm very excited for that.
Oh, I did see the new John Woo.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. Saw it opening night. Almost missed our friend's first Midnight Madness. And it's called Manhunt. And I heard from a few people that John Woo didn't come to the festival. And the reason for that is he's very sick.
Well, that's terrible.
And that, he thinks he's going to die, and that most people believe that this is his last film. And if it's the last film to go on, whoa boy, because it is the wooiest film that ever wooed, showing stylistic tics that he hasn't used since like the 90s. Random freeze frame, a like jazz fusion score, and even, you know, a little bit of balletic bullet action near the end.
Wow, everything you've just said, like, I just feel so emotional now.
Really?
Yeah.
The idea that John Woo won't be there anymore.
Yeah, and that if this is his last film, that he went out on, you know, on this.
It feels like the work of a man who knows this is the last thing he will ever do.
Wow.
There's not a second spared, but in the process of putting this out, it's easy to openly ridicule. Because the things that make John Woo Woo are goofy as fuck.
Okay.
So when you have them all stacked on top of each other, like, it's super fun, but also incredibly crazy.
Well, he's a great man, a great filmmaker, and I encourage our listeners to keep him in their thoughts and prayers.
Hopefully he will make more movies.
I encourage John Woo to continue to be alive.
How can John Woo fucking die without making a goddamn musical?
I just want to say that, like...
A Woozical.
I just feel like everyone that I like is 70 years old or older. And I feel like this year and last year in particular, I've just had one really painful death after another, and it's only going to get worse.
Until you're going to be just numb and you don't care anymore?
Well, until like everyone I like is dead, and then, you know,
you lock the doors and never come out?
All that's left are, like, you know, the mediocrities of today.
You sound like Peter Bogdanovich.
Well, sorry.
What were you going to say?
Actually, I have a question for you, Will.
Sure.
One of the weird things that I sort of find myself doing sort of unintentionally is people that I love, there's usually like one or two works of theirs that I've never seen, because I almost like just like hold it so there's always something more that they did. Do you do, or have you, for example, have you seen everything Jerry Lewis has done? Do you know?
No, and in fact, like, that's an example. I've seen like all the things he's done that are good.
Yeah.
But there are ones that I haven't seen. I mean, I know that I have done that intentionally, like held off on certain things, but it's not something I make a habit of, because I'm always aware that if it's somebody like, say, for example, Jerry Lewis, who has a very long career, and a very complicated career, I always know that even if like I'm gonna revisit something that I haven't seen in 10 years, like it's constantly replenishing itself. Yeah,
there's always different ways to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, like, I sort of feel sort of sometimes unintentionally, sort of almost unintentionally, I sort of like just leave one and don't see it. But at the same time, like, even when these people like leave us, like, they have this body of work that it's just often it's just so pleasurable to just keep revisiting, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, there are certain things that I feel a little bittersweet about, like the fact that, you know, I grew up loving Monty Python, and I've seen every episode of Monty Python 5 times at least. I've seen every, you know, I've listened to every album, I've seen every movie, and I know that I've basically used up Monty Python. And like, I can't watch the Dead Parrot sketch and really get much out of it anymore. So I feel a little sad about that.
Maybe one day it'll be hit on the head and you'll lose all your memory and you can watch it anew again.
There are definitely, I'm sure you feel this way, a lot of things where you look at it and you're like, I wish I could watch this for the first time again.
Even for me, those things have been kind of like warm blankets that I can still go and revisit. Because, like a John Woo, for example, like Hard Boiled, I hadn't watched it for like almost a decade since we watched it in theaters because I know it so well. But I know it's there if I need to go back to it.
Yeah, Monty Python and the Holy Grail is a movie that I'm kind of halfway through a 10-year, like, drought on it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to wait 10 years before seeing it again.
This is when you will watch it with your children and you will discover it anew and they will hate it and you'll be like, why don't you find this funny?
Yep.
You know who loves Jerry Lewis? Jean-Luc Godard in that Redoutab movie.
Oh,
He
nice.
says, you know, the only good comedians are the Marx Brothers and Jerry Lewis.
Well, I often think of the thing that he said on the Dick Cavett show when Dick Cavett asked him, do you find Jerry Lewis funny? He said, oh yes, even when he's not funny, he's more funny.